Selling your dental practice is one of the biggest decisions you will make in your dental career. And I am so honored to have the DDS Match team, transition specialist, here with me today, awesome supporters and sponsors of Dental Nachos, to share value with you on how not to mess up one of the biggest decisions of your career. If you are watching or listening and you want to learn more, text BUY to 215-543-6454 or text SELL to 215-543-6454, and we will connect you with our amazing key resources and sponsors. And I just want to remind you, it is never too early to start treatment planning, one of the biggest decisions of your career. So I'm thrilled to have my guest on with me today. Would you introduce yourself to our Nacho and Dentist Job Connect audience?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Cameron Elrod with DDS Match out in Michigan.
Awesome.
And I'm Jamie Gialanella with DDS Match in Michigan as well.
Awesome. Well, I always like to start off, give us a little bit, each of you, a day in the life of what you do to help dentists. I say survive, thrive, and not cry inside, right? That's my goal, not crying inside. So transition specialists are a big part of that. So just give us a little rundown of what you guys do in your daily life to help dentists.
Sure. So, I mean, it's just constant conversations and education. I think previous guests you've had have talked about not having the experience in buying or selling because you only do it once usually in your career. And so we do it every day. So we're constantly just answering questions. We only represent sellers, but 90% of our time is spent educating buyers.
Yeah.
So we're just on the phone all day, every day.
Tell them the stuff that dental school does not cover. They teach them how to memorize how the kidney works. You could Google that, right? Hasn't helped me once, but it would have been super helpful for me to know, because one of the biggest mistakes I made in my dental career was working with a dual representation broker, losing money, costing myself time, money, and effort. But there was no Dental Nachos back then. It was the olden days of 2011. So I was not educated. I was not aware. I know we talk about LOIs. I talk about LOA, lack of awareness from dentists. So Jamie, share with us what you do in your daily dental day.
I would say that it's very similar to Cameron's. We spend an awful lot of time at DDS Match educating both on the buy side and the sell side. Like you said, it's either an LOI or an LOA.
Yeah.
But we like to say that we love having educated buyers and sellers. The more educated they are, the more questions that they have for us, the more that they want to learn, the better for us. And so it's enjoyable to spend our days educating people on what we think is the right way to transition their practice, whether that be on the buy side or the sell side.
And when people mess us up, they cry both inside and outside. And I mean, as someone who is a dentist, I'm a practicing dentist, still do 1 day a week. I own 2 practices, run Dental Nachos, Dentist Job Connect. I've purchased multiple practices. I've been in the transitions broker space. And it is poignant and heartbreaking when a seller or buyer comes to you, and a lot of times it's the seller, and they're like, hey, can I get this done in this time frame because the XYZs happen? You're like, not even close. I mean, you are so behind schedule. And they're I don't want to say innocence, but lack of awareness is just, it can be very, very heartbreaking. So I'm glad we're here to help with this, share information to make better decisions. Get your acts together. I was saying on previous episodes, you guys should say to dentists, like, when you plan a big case, like you take x-rays and photos and CBCTs and perio charting, and you would never plan a big case without any of that. Dentists come to transition broker and say, you think I can sell my practice for 100% collections? It does this. And I said, we need to get the information we need to succeed. So before we go into this part of it, or maybe it will be part of this initial question on what the practice optimizer experience is, what is some information sellers need to bring to you so you can start helping them plan? Cameron or Jamie, you could tell us about that.
I can start us off. The sellers are generally don't know what it is that they want. But they know they need to start. They need to do something. And so they start the process, and then they discover through the process and refine what it is that they want. And that generally ends up in some swing and misses in the process. So, but, at least they've educated themselves through trial and error. We try and start as early as we possibly can, and gathering as much information as we can. That we have a process that we follow, like you're saying, a treatment plan. We follow a process just like dentists do with with every procedure that they do. And they love a process, love our process because it allows us to execute so much higher. The first thing that we do though is we find out what it is they actually want to accomplish. There's so many more variables than just getting the money from their sale. There's so many terms, the work post-transaction, the taxes, all of these things. And if you push all that to the front of the conversation, it's so much easier for the broker to facilitate a strategy on their terms.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. It's such amazing value. I mean, dentists are faced with that with patients who haven't gone to the dentist in many years, finding out what they really want. Is it to smile better? Is it to chew better? And it's an emotionally overwhelming process. So I think sellers, buyers, just expect this to be an emotionally overwhelming process. I will find, and you can tell me if you agree, Jamie, okay, to disagree, that it's more emotionally overwhelming than financially overwhelming. The financial part is often much easier to deal with than the emotional part and the questions around it. Have you found that to be the case, Jamie?
That's correct, 100%. This is an extremely emotional decision for them. And so as much as Cameron and I can detach ourselves from that emotion that they're feeling, the better analysis that we can do for them and the better plan that we can put in place. And I think that's what the Practice Optimizer experience does, is it removes the emotion, because it's the process that's happening potentially 10 years prior to the actual sale of the practice. And so you're not in that fight or flight mode. Like you said, the client comes to us often. I wanted to sell my practice yesterday. Didn't happen. Now I want to do it, as quickly as possible. And this offering from DDS Match, the POE, allows us to do a deep dive much earlier in the process, where they then have that ability to really plan and what does that future look like? Because we want to set up a transition plan that fits for that dentist, just like you do for your patients. It's not cookie cutter, it's what that specific patient wants. And that's what we want for our client. It's not for it to look identical every time, but for us to really know what those goals are so that they get the transition that they're looking for.
I want to ask more about Practice Optimizer in a minute, but one of the things I hope I can help you guys talk dentist to your clients, because many people come to us and say, hey, I need my teeth fixed for my daughter or granddaughter's wedding. I go, oh, cool. When's the wedding? They go, 2 weeks from today. I go, could you have come a little sooner? What that does is it makes me have a feeling in my stomach. That's not a good one. And even if I strive to get this done, I always say, if you would have come earlier, we could have done a better job. Starting earlier, you'll get the best job possible. And you can aware and scare dentists by saying, if you don't start early enough, we will not be able to do the best job possible. We will not be able to get the best price possible, or really the best transition strategy possible. So tell us about this Practice Optimizer experience that DDS Match offers.
It's really the most powerful resource that we have. But unfortunately, like your patient that came to you 2 weeks before the wedding, it's not deployed nearly as much as it should be. We would love to do this with every client, but basically we need to do it a minimum of 5 years in advance. And we could do it 3, but 5 is ideal, but we couldn't do it far enough out. And it's a 7-step process that just basically tackles all the variables that lead up to an exit and helps them get prepared. We start with valuing their business, and then valuing the real estate or reviewing the lease, and then talking to a financial planner. And then they don't have to fire their existing financial planner. This is just one that we've hired that allows us to take their nest egg, add what we've discovered on the valuation of their assets, and then determine what they need to retire on, then work it backwards so we can determine a date to start the transition process. And then we talk to an estate attorney, and then the estate attorney reviews the deal to make sure that there's no hurdles to get in the way, because trust me, this happens. Like, people die and they don't understand that they got a bunch of built-in hurdles that they just didn't explore, and we've got to be the ones to uncover them. If we did it 5 years ago, we wouldn't deal with any of these things that we run into. It's essentially all the hurdles that we get into that we try and overcome in the normal sales process, we can overcome if we did the POE 5 years earlier. But
I think you're sharing so much great value. I just want to interject that, I mean, from my life, sadly, my own father was a dentist, passed away suddenly. and worked with them for 11 years with my brother. It was an amazing opportunity and time. But since we were partners at the time, that from a dental perspective, the transition was set because of my brother and I were already owners. We had to hire associates, but I had to take care of his estate, and selling his home was so stressful. I mean, the buyers acted like the home was about to fall apart, who could eat in its kitchen. And I just want to share with you, anyone can buy a home. What I'm hoping, I get a little bit chills when I talk about this. What I'm hoping dentists get from what you just shared is you don't want to annoy people after you're gone. Like, you don't want to set your family up in an emotionally devastating time for more devastation with your dental practice, because it's such a complex transition. And I have experienced this from solo practice owners that sadly have suddenly died, and their family has a total mess on their hands. So I think that alone, Cameron and Jamie, is a reason to do the practice optimizer. But then maybe, Jamie, from a fun angle, because that's, I know, kind of a morbid angle, do they learn things about their practice that they could do better or make more money or help when they do the practice optimizer experience? Is it kind of like one of those fitness checks where you say, hey, I'm doing well over here, but I need to do better over here?
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it does it from their own personal perspective, also financially. When we talk about, these retirement calculators and things, some people get really excited. Hey, look I could retire today. Others are like, ooh, I guess I need to, reel it in, or I need to do other things in order for me to be able to retire in the timeline that I want to. But it also, looks at all of the measures of the practice. So we've partnered with Dental Intelligence to provide reporting for them on what could be improved or what areas they need to look a little bit deeper at. That would be a huge benefit to a future buyer. And then also we work with a insurance negotiator to kind of discuss those fees and such, if fees haven't been raised in a while, or if doctor hasn't negotiated, or should I go fee for service? We have an opportunity to really sit down and answer all of those questions that are so important, not only to the seller for this remainder of life that they have within the practice, but also for the buyer who would be coming in.
I love that. And also, I've purchased, multiple practices, and, one day I'll sell my practice. There's also, like, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but maybe pride in what you're turning over to another professional. Listen, hey, when I'm not saying someone should go out and buy a CBCT tomorrow if they don't have it, but like, hey, there's some things that you can do inside of your practice to turn it over with more pride. And then I'm assuming, as you know, that also winds up getting you more money, more attractive to buyers.
Definitely.
And this wild thing, I'm assuming, Karen, probably makes your practice more fun to practice in the years that you have left.
We were just having this conversation the other day about just that. I mean, when we bundle this up and put together for a doctor, we uncover a lot of things that they hadn't thought about, like you just suggested, like equipment. A lot of people say, I'm not going to buy anything. I'm going to let the next owner deal with that. And they don't realize, they're going to be competing against other offices that are newer, have the technology.
100%. And I was just saying, I love this concept. I like analogies. Like, whether it's the 1990s now, every house needs to have a microwave, right? So if you're going to buy a house that didn't have a microwave, you'd be like, it's kind of weird that this house doesn't have a microwave. And now that could be digital x-rays, right? So while it's potentially like, hey, yes, they could do that, it's not attractive to, I mean, we've taken both our practice digitally over our time. It's an enormous hassle, enormous expense, enormous thing. So if I was buying a practice, they said, hey, we have a whole digital system here. This is how this works. I mean, you guys can, I'd love for you to share this. Sellers, my grandmother thought I was the smartest and most handsome boy in the world, okay? But that was probably a little biased, okay? So tell me just for a minute before we go into the DDS match difference, why, you need to stand out as a seller, and why, buyers may have choices of multiple practices. Just tell me a few minutes about inspiring sellers to look their best when they sell.
Well, it's competition, right? In most markets, you've got a seller's market. Like in the state of Michigan, we have a lot more buyers than we do sellers. But that doesn't mean that you can just, abandon your responsibility in having something that's presentable. Like, if you're not ready financially, if you don't have your books in order, you can run all of those buyers off. If your office is modern, you're not modern and you haven't done the updates, you're forcing all of them to recalculate their cash flow in that practice and do the analysis that's outside the valuation that we did, because it doesn't reflect all the stuff that they think needs to be done. and what they think is really what's important. Just because you do a cash flow analysis doesn't mean that the new person isn't going to demand to have a scanner, because they
And I think I'll add, it's also the speed in which you want someone to take over your practice, right? And, they're in these buyers markets, they still have to unwind themselves from associate jobs, maybe move, maybe get a license. So this is not, a earth-shattering, comment by me, but the more attractive something is to go and get, the faster people want to be in that situation. And, I think that's a really key point. Now tell me, Jamie, what's the DDS match difference? What does that mean to you? What should that mean to our audience listening?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it's important for buyers and sellers to know this. We touched on this a little bit earlier in our conversation, but this idea that we do not dual represent at DDS Match.
Yeah.
We do spend probably 90% of our time with buyers, educating them and then introducing them to dental specific attorneys, CPAs, whatever type of advisory team they need to put together that they haven't already done so on their own. But we only represent sellers. And so that allows us to really dive into what it is that our seller is looking for in their transition. And so it allows us to just be really hyper focused on our client and delivering, the best transition possible for them. There's so many things that set us apart. Dual representation is one. Our valuation is another. I'll let Cameron kind of touch on that.
I love this part of it. Makes so much sense to me, and I'm sure it makes sense to Dennis. Tell us about how the valuation works with DDS Match. I want to sell my practice. Last episode, I saw us say, hey guys, I want to sell my practice and, go coach the Detroit Lions so they don't lose in the conference championship next year. No, just kidding. Great season for them. But I do 1.5 million. I got 6 operatories. I have pretty good profit, but I really want to know what I can sell this practice for. How's the valuation work with you guys?
Yeah, we use an independent third party, and it's very strategic and wise, because the traditional way of valuing practices is it's done internally. And it's kind of like if you were selling your house and you just picked your own price for your house. That may be what you want, but it may not be market. It may not be what people are actually willing to pay. And so all you've done is you've just opened up your project to a big negotiation. And when you go with an independent third party, like we do, we use Blue and Company out of Indianapolis. They put together this big book that's done by a CVA. It's just an accreditation beyond CPA. And they're certified at valuing businesses, and they do a complete analysis and come up with a number. And this works great because it gives instant credibility to the buyer and the buyer's advisors, more importantly. Because now the buyer's advisors are coaching them, saying, well, this is done by a CPA. It's now I got to update the data. I don't have to redo the analysis. It's already done. And it takes the hardest part about a transition, maybe the price, and it just shoves it to the very beginning of the process. And so historically, you got all the terms figured out, and then at the very end, you dickered over price, and you lost egos, got involved, and you lost deals that should have been happening. Yeah. Everybody wasted time, energy, and attorney fees. And when we shove the price to the front with this independent third party, it just resolves all of that, and everybody's happy at the finish line, and we're just negotiating terms.
Yeah, I love it. It's the ultimate managing of expectations on both sides, right? I'm sure you're managing expectations on both sides daily between buyers and sellers. And, both of them, it's a very emotional time for them. Sometimes buyers say to me, I want to get the best deal possible on the practice. I go, no, you don't. And sometimes sellers say, I want to get every last dollar out of the buyer. I say, also, no, you don't, because it's got to be a win-win scenario. And I think it's really admirable in a world that can be nacho nuts practice transitions. That's the official term. Nacho nuts. It's great that you have this ability to give this third-party valuation that I'm just, I'm sure it inspires confidence in everyone who's dealing with this deal, if that's, a play on words, from the attorneys to the buyers and the sellers. Well, you guys have shared so much awesome value with us. You're located in Michigan. We'll share with people how they can connect with you, but is there anything else you wanted to share about the wild and wacky world of buying and selling practices? You guys shared so much value with our audience, from the optimizer, the practice evaluation, and making good decisions, the dangers of dual rep, living example of the dangers of working with a dual rep broker. But any last things for the audience?
Well, there's so much more. So like one of your previous people had mentioned, it starts with a conversation. So, we're always open to having conversations, costs nothing. Just have a dialogue and we can fill you in on all the details.
Yeah,
Absolutely love that. How about you, Jamie?
I would just say that the beauty of DDS Match is that each one of us is doing this exact same process.
Yeah.
So whether the doctor's in Michigan, yes, Cameron and I would love to speak with them. But if the doctor is somewhere across the country, all of our counterparts are doing this the exact same way. And that's just a beautiful thing at DDS Match, that there's no guessing happening to the transition of their dental practice.
Absolutely love this. I can't let an episode go by without mentioning my failed dreams of playing professional basketball in the NBA. And it's just a good example of, you need a team to succeed. You need the right team to treatment plan the biggest decision of your career. People can text buy to 215-543-6454 to learn more if you're looking to buy a practice, and text sell to 215-543-6454 if you're looking to sell, or just reach out to us at dentalnachos.com. Thank you both so much for sharing with me today.
Thank
Thanks
you
for having us.